I don't take nothing that a doctor don't prescribe. I don't do no drugs, man. I don't do no drugs, man. I don't smoke no bud, man. I don't do no drugs, man. It angers up that blood, man, so I don't do no drugs. I just take Paxil, Xanax, Zoloft, Flomax, morphine, Valtrex, Flonase, Plavix, codeine, Zyrtec, Zoma, Zantac, Ultram, Zocor, Zipro, Prozac, dopamine, Demerol, Lexapro, Tylenol, Vicodin, Lyrica, Lipitor, and Adderall. But I don't do no drugs, man. I don't do no drugs, man. I don't smoke no bud, man. I don't do no drugs, man.
Hey everyone, it's Dr. Beard, and for those of you who do not know me, I am a certified functional medicine physician who also has worn many hats in the healthcare arena. Family medicine doctor, ER doctor, cardiac rehab medical director. I was also a dietitian back in the day. So I've done a lot of things, seen a lot of things. And today I am joined by Anna Allen.
And hi guys, like she said, my name is Anna Allen, and I am currently a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner who has recently been given the opportunity to work for Dr. Amy Beard, and it has just been a joy to be able to do that. And I'm a recent graduate of college and my undergrad, and I got my undergrad in dietetics, similar to Amy, and so we have that in common and ties into a lot of really what we want to talk about today. And my journey into functional medicine really happened while I was in the dietetics program and completing that and finishing over 1,000 hours of my clinical experience and really just seeing there needed to be a change and a difference. And I dove more into that and found myself in functional nutrition and functional medicine. And so I'm really excited just to be able to share that and talk more about that today.
Yeah, welcome to the not dark side. It's a very freeing thing when you start walking in truth, right? And I feel like that is going on in the healthcare arena. A lot of people are realizing that what we've been taught is not necessarily the truth, and you're starting to see a lot of people just leave. You know, and I think that's a good thing because they're joining our ranks, right? Yes. We need more help on this side. There needs to be more functional medicine practitioners, nutritionists, all of the things, because that really is, I feel like, our best chances at helping society become healthier.
Right.
So we've started this podcast. Anna and I were kind of talking one day, and you know, there's so many, you know, I'm 51 now, you're just 22, but I feel like you're an older 22, you know, and I have learned a lot in 51 years. And so the theme of this podcast is really, you know, what I wish I knew then when I was your age, because hindsight is always 20/20, and I feel like I'd love to be able to share my experiences, especially from a functional medicine perspective, because my life, I feel like, or at least my health, would have been very different had I had access to functional medicine knowledge.
To starting that young.
Yes,
age, when you're still resilient.
Right, because, I mean, the younger you can start with incorporating these principles, which are a lot, really common sense. Basics. It's going to be nothing but beneficial for your health.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's get started, shall we?
Well, you know, the first thing that I would love to know is, what were you doing at 23? What was Amy like? What was she up to on the everyday?
So there's still people alive that know I was 23. So I'm going to have to be very honest. When I was 23, you know, I was, let's see here, I was just graduating, I think, from my RD program, and had already knew that it was like, this is not going to be a long-term thing for me. And so, of course, when you're young, you never think you're going to get old. And so I was doing a lot of partying and just enjoying being young and not in school.
Yeah.
So you go to school, you work hard, and now you just want to like have some fun, because I didn't have a lot of fun in college because I also had to work and all that stuff. So I was just out partying. It was work hard, play hard type of mentality. And so what else? So I was like, hanging out, staying out late during the week, even on the weekends. I was back home with my parents at the time. I actually went back home to work. And so I was living with them, which was probably not the best thing, because you didn't really help foster a lot of responsibility at that age, like I feel like it should have. Sorry about that, Mom and Dad. I'm a lot better now, and you know it. So anyway, I was just enjoying life probably too much, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It's the mindset of a lot of young people, especially when you're exiting college and you do have a lot more freedom, free time, and you also have this mindset. Speaking of mindsets, it's just that you cannot break. Your health will not fall apart. You're not thinking about 20 or 30 years down the road. And so just thinking about that, where do you feel like your mindset was at 23?
You think you're going to be young forever. And the goal is to be as young as long as you can, right? And I think it is possible to feel that way for a long time. I think we've been sold a bunch of BS, but it's like, oh, you're just getting older, just your genetics, you're supposed to feel this way. I don't think that's necessarily true. And I do see that younger and younger people are having more and more chronic problems, things that my generation did not have. Obesity was not an issue when I was in high school and even in college. You just did not see a lot of overweight people. People were still thin. Nobody had all this ADHD, anxiety. There were people who had anxiety and depression. I was one of them. But it was just not...
Yeah, it wasn't normalized.
It wasn't normalized.
Which now it is very normalized.
And it's not, and it shouldn't be normalized, because it is not normal. It's common, but it's not normal. And so, it's the whole mindset of just never getting older and you can just do whatever you want to this body and it's going to be okay. That's not the case. You only have one body. You need to take care of it, because you will get older, Lord willing.
Yeah.
You will become you will be 51 one day, Anna.
One day
you'll be 51 and you're going to like, man, I hope you don't. But you don't want to look back and say, man, I wish I would have been better to my body.
Yeah, that's huge.
And physically and mentally.
Yeah, I think the mental aspect is huge right now.
Yes.
We're a generation of stressed out people. And you take the more specific route into that, you think about women, and you think about what happens to our body specifically, when we are chronically stressed.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that tie into that, right? It's not just being stressed out about your work or school or finishing up, but there's a lot of habits that play into that, and things that you don't even realize that are happening as you're building these small, feels like tiny habits, but over time, those are building up. So what were your habits like of, your everyday, and you were finishing your RD, and then eventually into med school?
Yeah, that wasn't even a thought at that time. Because I was always, even though I graduated at the top of my high school class, graduated with a 4.0 from college, I had never had anybody come up and say, hey, have you ever thought about going to medical school? Or it was just like, kind of was taught, like, maybe you're not smart enough to do that. But I was like, my grades say otherwise. But I had so many influences telling me, oh, you can't do that. Or it's so hard. You'll never be able to do that. And I believed that.
Yeah.
And that says a lot more about me than the people who were telling me that. And so, but the kind of got off track, but the daily habits back then were, it was, again, staying out late because I could.
Yeah.
You could recover
Very quickly.
really quickly
Yes.
when you're young. You could do that multiple nights in a row and still function okay. But it was, the food choices were not good, but they were all low fat, low cholesterol, right? Because that's what we were taught back then as dietitians. If it was low fat, low cholesterol, it was good to eat. Okay.
Which is sadly still
Still
normal
present.
Of, just even in my clinical rotations, this is the education that I was being told I needed to bring to patients in the hospital who were chronically ill.
Yeah.
I was being told to inform them that they need to lower their cholesterol and avoid cholesterol-rich foods.
But here, eat all this sugary, carb-filled, chemical-laden foods, and they're just fine.
Right.
And so that's what I was doing, right? And then also I was, exercise. That's what we're taught, in dietetics. Or it was just like, if you exercise and eat right, then everything else is
Calorie in,
calorie in, calorie out. Yeah. And so I was burning as many
Yeah.
calories as I could because I still, I had issues, self-esteem issues, of course, like a lot of women do when it comes to their weight, how they look. And so that was a big influence on me was the way I looked.
Yeah.
Fitness was everything. I was an athlete, so it wasn't a big deal for me to do all of that. But I was so over exercising, and basically riding my bike a lot because I was riding with some friends who had older siblings that raced bikes and all that. So that's all we did then. And so we had our little routine. We'd all stay out late with each other, eat bad, over exercise. And that's all that really mattered then. And I was not in church at that time. My friends didn't really go to church either. I had stopped going to church at the age of 17 when my mom said, when you graduate from high school, you don't have to go to church anymore. And I was like, peace out.
Yeah.
Did not enjoy church at all. It was all, do this, do that, so you don't go to hell. Or just be on the straight and narrow until God comes and,
Everything will be okay.
everything's okay, and so it just never, I was like, this just does not appeal to me. In fact, I think it probably, I know it did, caused an identity crisis, which is a whole other topic, but is, I think, the crux of a lot of everything.
Yeah.
Is like people do not know their identity as a child of God.
Right.
And they just have a very distorted sense of that. And your identity is going to dictate your thoughts and beliefs and actions.
And eventually your body.
Your health.
Because,
Absolutely.
I think in our generation, they're very separate. You have your physical health, which people think they're taking care of themselves or eating, like you said, as in the dietetics field, it's you eat right and you exercise, as much as possible, and that's how you stay healthy and that's how you don't get sick in the future. But they've just been so separate of, here's your spiritual health, go to
in
church,
this little box,
do the right thing, read your Bible. Then over here, it's like, and then take care of yourself, eat all the right things and exercise. And when you look at them separately, that seems to be where a lot of people fall apart.
Yeah, and that's why, there's rarely, never, ever, especially when I was going through medical school and residency, never, ever was God discussed in any conversation with a patient, their spiritual health. It just never came up, and now I realize how big of a deal that is. I only ended up in dietetics because I was an anorexic.
Which you see so often.
Yeah.
I think almost most of the people that I went to school with, and you probably went to school with too, you're in this field because you've lived it. You you have maybe a problem with around food, or you will think that you're just a really healthy person, so you should teach other people how to be healthy.
Orthorexia comes to mind. Just this obsession with health and eating healthy. Mine wasn't really eating healthy. Health had nothing to do with it. It all had about what I looked like.
Yeah.
I wanted to look like one of the supermodels. I wanted to be skinny. You were naturally that way. And one of my best friends was too. She could go eat, those mozzarella sticks and milkshakes. She would every day to put on weight.
Which can be frustrating. I mean, I've seen it too, of just like, I'm in this field because I want to educate people on how to be healthy. And my habits affected my body in the way that I felt, to the point where I was like, okay, I'm not doing something right, and it's not what I'm being told in school. But you have those people who do whatever they want to their body and eat whatever they want, or drink whatever they want, whether it's Diet Coke or energy drinks, or they skipping breakfast, all the things that are little things that are very common, especially in college and young adults. But they do those things and they have it's not affecting them now, so they're not going to do anything about it.
It will. The thing is it may not be you may not feel it, but eventually you will. And then when you start feeling it, it's going to take a little time to reverse all of that. And I will say that I seem to be very resilient to all of these things that I was doing. But I also think it has something to do with, like, the food that we ate back then is not the same as it is today. It's not. I was watching a video where somebody was comparing, like, the same products today versus 30 years ago. And it went from, like, a few ingredients to, like, a list of stuff
that you have no idea what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not the same food. And even back then, the food what we were eating then wasn't the same as what our grandparents were eating.
Right.
So when you start thinking about, like, they were able to get away with smoking cigarettes all day long and working hard, and it seemed like, they were fine. Like, a lot of my older relatives lived to be very old. And they were healthy up until, very, very, those last years. And so you're kind of like, why were they able to?
What changed?
And I think we all pretty much know a lot of what has changed. Food, chemical exposures, just this social media.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is huge. Just in medicine too. Like, everybody is on so many pharmaceuticals right now, like never before. That is not helping at all, and it's hard. It's hurting people.
Well, seems to be the first line of defense.
It
it's
is.
Never the foundation. It's never. How much sunlight are you getting in your day? Are you moving your body?
What doctor is asking somebody that?
Exactly. When there's studies,
I know,
to prove it. And I think that's a lot of our generation's, the struggle that we have, and why we wanted to do this podcast was to just provide more of an education around, okay, you are young, what can I do to change or to make a difference in my health now and in the future? You
got to start thinking prevention and be of a future mindset, because it's coming.
Yeah.
And
you don't know when it's coming.
No,
it could happen. I mean,
and you don't know what life's going to throw at you. You might be single right now, but at some point you're probably going to be married, with kids, and so you want to make sure that you're a healthy role model for that. Healthy people have, it's going to help with a healthy marriage.
Yes. Right, and then you affect each other. I was reading a study the other day that talked about how a stressed out mom led to a physiological stressed out baby.
Yes.
An infant.
They pick up on it.
And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
You're thinking about your kids or starting a family, or who you're surrounding yourself with.
Yes. Who you're surrounding yourself with is a big one. My friends were not the best influences, but I was also attracted to that crowd too. So I'm not going to blame them. I was seeking these people out. because it was just, I mean, I was adventurous and I would try anything once. If you told me not to do that and didn't tell me why not to do that, I'm going to find out why.
Yeah.
So, and that seems like that happened my whole life, especially in the churches. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't have sex outside of marriage.
Yes.
Don't do drugs. Don't drink alcohol. You know.
But with no reason as to why.
Yeah.
And now I'm sure you can look back and see the beautiful things that are there. But, you know, when you're just told, don't do this, don't eat that, that's a huge, you know, like don't do these things, but you're not told why or how that can impact your health. I mean, you could go very serious in that conversation, or you could go more silly of like, I can tell people all the time, hey, you probably shouldn't be drinking that Diet Coke, because I did.
I lived off of them.
But
0 calories, right?
I needed to know why. Why is this product damaging my body, or what is it even doing? Was a big deal for me too.
I didn't stop drinking them until I was went to my first functional medicine conference. I seriously was drinking them up until that point, and then something was said during that first one. It was like it was a conference on the mitochondria and energy production, and something like, I remember the spread that they had there, and it was all very healthy, like no Diet Cokes anywhere.
You're like, what am I going to do?
They're like teas, but I was impressed too. But something was mentioned about artificial sweeteners, and it was like the first time I'd ever heard that maybe they're not so great. You know, and my health was very, very bad. I'd already had most of my colon removed at that point and had been given this MS diagnosis. And so it just never clicked until then.
Yeah. So for everyone out there, I mean, if you want to dive into a little bit of the science, I mean, drinks like this are very popular. I mean, you think of Diet Coke, but also just energy drinks. I wasn't a coffee drinker in college, so I lived off of energy drinks at the local coffee shop, or my Celsius. That was, 200 milligrams of caffeine, and who else knows what's in it.
Were you just an anxious little,
very anxious,
little chihuahua, right?
Yeah, very anxious, but also filled with all of those, what you mentioned before, of obligations of having to do more and be better, be more, and exercise more.
Yes.
So it's like you add on the stress of your body of consuming things like that are causing stress in your body, and then you're waking up at 5 a.m. to go only do cardio exercise because that's what makes you skinny. And
it doesn't, a lot of times, it actually makes you fat when you shortchange your sleep and then go do cardio in the mornings. And I've have to have that conversation with so many women who are struggling with weight. And you look at what their HPA axis is doing, and it's just like they're burned out. Their bodies are burned out, and they're wondering, like, why do I keep putting on weight? I'm like, because you're stressing your body out more and more and more. The energy drinks is when I was working in the ER, we had kids come in all the time having arrhythmias and just like mental issues and not feeling right. And you start asking them about these energy drinks, and that's all they're doing is drinking them all day long. My niece even had a problem with this. She would wear her Apple Watch, and her heart rate would just be like over 100, just sitting here. And I'm like, okay, you're 17. That's not good. What is going on? And my mom is such a wise lady, because I was like, she's got food sensitivities, which she has, but she was drinking energy drinks. Yeah. And then she was going to this place who does smoothies, but they add in all that other stuff. So you take something that's kind of healthy, which they're not.
You think it is. Yeah.
And then adding a bunch of caffeine. And these kids are just walking around with heart rates in the hundreds.
Right.
Like, that's normal. She said almost all her friends are like this because they're all drinking them.
Long term,
I'm getting excited. I'm sorry. You're so soft-spoken. I'm over here yelling.
Long term, I mean, I saw the effects of that pretty immediate, probably because the chronic stress was starting way way before, I even started drinking caffeine and exercising a lot. But taking that into consideration, I saw the effects in my gut, in my skin, in my anxiety.
I didn't have a clue. You put it together, and I just didn't.
Well, it took a lot, and you think it takes a lot of just being like, I need to change. Like, I do not feel good. So from that perspective, how would you explain to someone, how do these things stress out your body? Like, how do these things in long term, what can that chronic stress do, like, biologically?
And it's not like, stress comes in many forms, right? It's mental, emotional, physical. I throw spiritual in there too. Your body cannot determine where the stress is, what type of stress it is. It just responds the same. So yes, we all know about, work stress, life stress, work stress, home stress, things have to get done. There's not enough time in the day. And so that is going to create a stress response, this fight or flight nervous system response. But so can taking a lot of medications, which places a lot of extra effort on your detoxification pathways in your liver. Caffeine just does things. Caffeine is definitely a stressor in many, many different ways that we won't go into on this one. But alcohol, not getting enough sleep, over-exercising, eating, poor gut health, all these things are impacting your stress response in a negative way, which will put you into fight or flight. So many of them cause like blood sugar instability, especially because all of these things are negatively affecting your gut health. And your gut health is really impacting the rest of your body in a multitude of ways. Right. A lot of people have called it your second brain. Some people even said it's your first brain. And so when your gut health is impacted by all of these things, those gut microbiome, those gut bacteria there start responding in kind. They can get out of balance. And when that happens, you can have all kinds of problems. With your mood, your ability to maintain blood sugar levels. It can cause hyperinsulinemia and overshoots. And that's going to cause a stress on your body. So you kind of have to think of it in those terms.
Yeah, you have to think of it as everything's connected.
The whole body is connected. And somehow, in modern medicine, we have divided it out into organ systems and act like you got to do this for heart health, but whatever's good for heart health is good for brain health, is bone health, hormone health, gut health. Yeah. They all benefit from the same things. Yeah. So you kind of don't think of it like that. And it's this silo medicine that we call it is just a horrible approach to health.
Yeah. And it's affecting us in so many different ways right now. But one of the ways that I see it greatly affecting us is not only are the things that you're putting into your body can be harmful, but also what are you consuming with your mind and your identity. And so, talking about that, how do you feel like your identity has changed from 23 to now? But and then also, not that just your identity changed, but how have you seen that affect your physical body?
Wow, that's, I've struggled with identity issues for most of my life. It was only until recently that I understood that I was getting my identity from the world, which is a horrible thing to do. It will lead to disaster and a lot of bad choices. And so I've just now recently come into this wonderful place of knowing a much better idea who I am. And so I do not, gosh, it's so freeing. I feel like I feel freedom for the first time ever, or liberty in the first time I've ever felt it. Like the things that used to upset me or I used to be concerned about, don't even care about anymore. Yeah. It really doesn't bother me. So I have a lot less worry and anxiety, which, come on, that's only going to help you in so many ways. And so that's been a huge deal because there was always this strive for perfection. The dietetics world is full of perfectionists. I don't know if you picked up on that.
I was one of them, so
I was too.
Yes.
Everything had to be, if you're going to do it, it's got to be perfect. And anything short of perfection is just, what's wrong with you? You know, you should do better. And so God had to help me with that mindset. He had to help me with the mindset of self-sufficiency, because it was, I can do it. I don't need anybody else. And in fact, whenever anybody else tries to help, they just mess stuff up, you know. And so he had to get rid of this. I just treated myself as a little island for most of my life. It's like, I'm the only one I can depend on, you know. And he's like, no, I'm going to show you. I'm going to bring you to these wonderful people that are going to show you that you can count on them. And that you need in your life, because you're not supposed to be alone.
Yeah. That changes everything.
Oh my goodness.
It changes your health. It changes your
Yes.
mind, but also just your health. I mean, you mentioned earlier how the chronic stress puts you into that fight or flight state. But the opposite of that is rest and digest. So how do we get there? It comes a lot with what your thoughts are doing, the community you're surrounding yourself with, the people that you're spending your time with, but also time with the Lord.
That's the most important one. You can't leave him out of your health journey.
Yeah.
He's got to be front and center, because he's the one that made you. You know, and who knows you, who only wants the best for you, who does not want you sick. He's not punishing you, but he will use your illness to teach you things and to reveal your true identity and to get rid of false beliefs.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a while to do that. It doesn't happen overnight. I'm still on this journey. I'm much better than when I was. But it's still a journey, and and you have to include him in it. That's something I wish I could. That's the one thing I want to tell everybody is please take your relationship with God serious. Like, it should be the most important thing in your life.
Yeah. You see a lot of people right now just like moving a little bit towards more of the functional and the holistic world, but they're leaving out God.
It's very new age, which is dangerous, and I see it even creeping into the churches, and that's scary to me. And so there's only one truth. There is no your truth or my truth. There is one truth, and the truth is God. But yeah, it's a shame that, and I saw this in my functional medicine conferences. It's like they would they would talk about other religions in a positive way, like Buddhism,
the peace that it brings,
Native American, spirituality, but it's almost like sometimes Christianity would get was demeaned a little bit, or never discussed, and I feel like that is the case with a lot of functional medicine practitioners.
Yeah, well, it's this striving of like you're trying to heal, and you see a lot of people, they're on their healing journey, or they're in their healing era, whatever it is that you want to call it, to improve. Maybe it's their skin, maybe it's their gut health, maybe it's a condition that they were diagnosed with, and all things that have come up in the recent years, or maybe it's an hormone imbalance, and so you're doing X, Y, and Z to heal yourself. But I've seen this in my life.
Self-care, right? I even that was the name of our podcast at one time, and I changed it because God just kind of brought that to my attention.
Of what the world is viewing as self-care right now.
Just relying on yourself. Yes. And then also, in the functional medicine world, you have people who do all things natural, which I love. I'm all about using what God gave us to help ourselves, because he didn't want it to be complicated. But at the same time, I feel like there's a worship of nature, and not the one who created it.
There's a worship of biohacking. There's a worship of,
they're idols.
Yes, they're using You know, whether it's going to the sauna the X amount of times a week for X amount of minutes, or, you know, making sure you're not eating any ultra processed foods because you're trying to heal your body,
Right.
which are good things.
Right. But it's we're obsessed with
It
them.
consumes your mind
Yes.
to the point where it causes such anxiety that you're doing more harm.
Yeah, and God's over here. And all these other things are front and center.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been guilty of it. Fitness, being in shape was my idol.
Yeah.
That's consumed so much of my time and energy. And it was all connected to my identity. And I think, wow, so much of, had I just known who I was back then, man, it would have been such a different journey, I think.
Yeah.
You know, who knows what would have happened, but I do know that God's plans are by far the best plans, and He will let you suffer the consequences of some of your choices.
But when you recognize, you know, that truth that you just spoke, God's plans are the best plans. Like, He has good plans. You recognize that truth. It fills you with a lot of peace. So, you know, that's what a lot of people are seeking and striving for, and that might be the missing piece that they need to make that next step into feeling better about their physical health.
I don't know how it's easy to go there with people who are already believers, and I do that with my patients, because we have a little question about your support, and I'll make note of who marks spiritual, you know, religious, whatever, or who doesn't. And we already know the research is there, is the ones who do believe in God and use Him as a source of support and have a relationship with Him do better in life. They are healthier. And we've seen this with like the blue zones. You know, all of these people had strong spiritual beliefs and connection and family. I'm not saying that their spiritual beliefs are correct, but there were some that are Christian and who, you know, did well. So I think that would be that's just a message that I want to keep harping on, is that don't put God in a box and drag Him out just when you need something, or when life falls apart, and go grab Him then, even though He will come. You know, He will definitely come. But He wants to be so much more than that. He doesn't just want to be your lifeline, and every time you fall apart. He wants to have this ongoing, intimate relationship with you.
Because He knows you, and He knows what's good for you.
Yes.
And so I think from the start, when we go back to what He says about our world, about creation, about our food, about the way that we're taking care of our bodies, that's when things change, because you're involving Him, but also knowing that He knows you best. He knows your body best. He knows the world the best. So if what He's saying is always going to be,
and He will talk to you. He'll talk to you as you read His Word. He'll talk to you. You can just, He'll talk to you when you're just sitting there. You just have to be still and be quiet. Now, I feel like a lot of people are just, rat race, right?
Yes.
Constantly distracted from, the world can offer 24/7 distractions, and it does. And we fall victim to that. And so when we're constantly distracted, it's hard to hear from God.
Right. Which is feeding that loop of the constant stress and
Yes.
HPA axis dysfunction and the gut problems and the hormonal problems. Your mind plays such a big role in that. And like you said, it doesn't matter if it's a bear outside or if it's scrolling on social media, the stress response is going to be the same in the body.
Right.
And so I think you cannot take apart, that mind aspect of being still.
And when you're anxious, I would tell you, if you ever feel anxious or something, just first of all, just calm yourself and start talking to God. That's the first place you need to go. Not that now a lot of anxiety can be rooted in physiological processes, right?
Yeah.
You just drank, 200 milligrams of caffeine.
And what you're feeding your body even can play an impact.
Yeah, exactly.
Your anxiety or
You're having terrible gut health because you
Yes.
keep going by fast food restaurants
Yeah.
every day, so there's definitely physiological purposes for anxiety too. But sometimes even then, if it is, he'll guide you and like, hey, stop eating that. You're not being good to the body I gave you, so he will provide divine wisdom and guidance, which is awesome that you think of that. We have a Father who loves us so much. He loves to impart wisdom to us if we'll just ask for it.
And just listen.
And listen.
And be still. That silence is so uncomfortable for our generation.
It is, isn't it?
It's very uncomfortable. And we run from it. I mean, we want noise, whether it's social media, whether it's TV on, or whether it's your computer on, or whether
Walking around with music
Yes.
all the time.
And I don't think I realized how much of a stressful thing that was in my body, but I also was uncomfortable with silence, which is just a whole another conversation.
Wow, that is. I love silence. I can get in my car and drive 4 hours without ever.
Have you always been that way, or did it shift?
There's just been times, I was the firstborn, so I spent a lot of time by myself, So silence was kind of common, just doing my own thing. As a teenager, we all like music, right? So we're always having it blaring, but there wasn't I didn't have the distractions like you guys have now. We did not have social media. So we had to spend a lot of time by ourselves.
Yeah, in
doing,
silence.
whether it was drawing
Right.
or just looking up at the sky, and that's a whole other topic we could discuss is the social media
Yeah, social
aspect.
media, busyness.
Because I recommend digital detoxes frequently to patients. I've done them, and it's hard.
It is hard.
Yeah. So, but boy, we have really touched on a lot of things, haven't we?
Yes, we've covered a lot of topics.
I hope that, people I hope you'll listen if you're young.
Do you want to end on an action step of like, if, we touch on a lot of things, but if someone's like, okay, you're describing me, myself. I'm stressed out and I didn't even know I was stressed out, or feel like I have gut problems, or HPA axis dysfunction, or my hormones are out of whack. What do you feel like would be the number one place they start?
First and foremost, you take it to God and let Him know what you're having trouble with. He already knows what you're having trouble with, but He wants to hear it from you. He wants you to request His help, and so He will start praying about it, and He'll start showing you where you're going wrong, or He'll either tell you or He will bring someone to you to help you. I've seen that's kind of how He works. He likes to work through other people. If you haven't noticed, we're mini Christs. Christ. People should be able to see Christ through us because that's how He works. So that's the first thing I would recommend. The other things are just address the foundations, really. And I use this a lot in my practice, and people always think there's got to be some type of special biohack or special supplement or some type of hormone cream that's going to do the trick, and it just doesn't usually end up that way. So it's, first of all, you got to clean up your diet and really get off the processed foods. Eat real food, first and foremost. Just start there. Eat real food. Get outside. The sun is literally medicinal, and it will make you feel so much better. Sunlight, we already know that low vitamin D causes, depression and anxiety. So get more sun, get outside. People are not getting outside enough, and getting that sun exposure on your skin and to your retinas. Prioritize sleep. If you are not getting enough sleep or good rest, your stress response is going to be elevated the next day. Because you're tired and your body's trying to keep itself awake and alert. And it does that by pumping out a bunch of adrenaline. It's going to make you anxious. So prioritize sleep, and really take notice of your sleep hygiene. You don't need to be scrolling on the phone or exposing yourself to blue light and stuff like that before bed. It's a recipe for a bad night's sleep.
And when you wake up too.
Yeah.
This is important.
Yeah, go get some sun. Kind of do what your grandparents were doing. I'm serious. I mean, I don't think we should all go back and live in mud huts and wear animal skins and, forage for food. I'm glad we don't have to do that. But modern life has brought us a lot of modern problems, and you have to kind of start breaking it down in that way. So, when you get up in the morning, go outside. Just get your eyes exposed to that morning sun. It's good to have some involvement with good friends, but also don't overschedule yourself. And be okay being alone sometimes.
And even if you're a scheduler, maybe schedule that time.
Yeah.
Alone. Or that time in silence where you can just sit.
There's nothing. Get used to that of just sitting still, breathing. I like to just go outside and listen to birds, feel the breeze. It's hard to do it right now in Arkansas because it's so hot and there's so many bugs and it's humid. But God even went into the wilderness. Jesus went to the wilderness for 40 days. In fact, he liked to go find peace. And he was trying to show us these things. He was trying to show us a lot of things when he walked this earth. And so you got sun, sleep. Movement is important. We know that exercise is a great way to battle depression and anxiety. Not too much.
Right.
Because you can make it worse. But there is a balance. And it doesn't always have to be this high intensity madness either. I'm not saying you can't go for a run because sometimes it feels great, but doing that all the time is, especially when you're not getting enough sleep or you're eating poorly.
When you have other stressors,
yes.
exercise,
yeah.
The high intensity is not the best option.
Yeah.
If you've got 10 other stressors that's going on.
Right. And so I think those are the big things.
Yeah.
I mean, the toxin stuff that's important too. I'm not going to minimize that.
We can get into that later.
But we can get into that later. But those things are what I find that help people the most and the quickest. Okay.
Those are great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's free. I mean, the food's not, but if you were growing it,
There is a way.
which is not, which is a whole other issue too, because that's not easy either. But yeah, getting good sleep, prioritizing sleep, getting movement, getting outside, those free. It's not costing you anything.
Free healthcare.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the way it was intended, right?
Yeah.
Good stuff. Anything else that we need to talk about? Any other questions?
I think that's good. I think we covered a lot.
I think we did, didn't we?
A lot of bases.
Yeah. And we've got some other interesting topics
Yes.
on the way, and we just made a little list. And so some of them are about aesthetic procedures, right? All the rage right now, all these mini med spas and the things that they offer, social media, digital detoxes, tattoos, right? Birth control, fertility, hormones and hormone balance.
Balances.
Yes.
What does that even mean?
Yeah. And gut health, of course, that will be a topic that is, huge, but very important. So these are just some of the things that we've kind of come up with thus far. Yeah. So if there's other things that you would like us to discuss, let us know, and we'll add it to the list. And we might even get moved up to the top of the list, depending on what you want us to talk about. All right. Well, I had fun today.
It was a lot of fun.
I know. It was a great first episode for this podcast that we have not named yet.
Let us know if you have.
If you have a cool name that kind of speaks to the theme of what I wish I knew then, let us know, because we're kind of struggling with this. We need something catchy. All right, guys. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll listen to some of the future podcasts that we'll have too.
I don't take nothing that a doctor don't prescribe. I don't do no drugs, man. I don't do no drugs, man. I don't smoke no bud, man. I don't do no drugs, man. It angers up that blood, man, so I don't do no drugs. I just take Paxil, Xanax, Zoloft, Flomax, morphine, Valtrex, Flonase, Plavix, codeine, Zyrtec, Zoma, Zantac, Ultram, Zocor, Zipro, Prozac, dopamine, Demerol, Lexapro, Tylenol, Vicodin, Lyrica, Lipitor, and Adderall, but I don't do no drugs, man. I don't do no drugs, man.